Well, I was not a gardener when I was little. I was an actor, and I lived in New York City and Jersey City, actually, across from New York. And I had a friend of mine who was my neighbor, who was from Israel, and he developed the backyard into a vegetable garden. And I was in my 30s, and he moved and he left me the garden. And I said, "Well, you better not, because I don't know anything about that." And he said, "Well, all you got to do is water and pick." So I just fell in love with gardening, and it surprised everybody in my family. And and then jump ahead. Then we moved to LA, like about within 5 years. I really got into vegetable gardening, tomatoes and chili peppers especially. There was like a chili pepper craze then. And anyway, so we moved to LA, and you can garden year round. And we were renting in Silver Lake, and I was loving it. A lot of tomatoes and chilies, and then we moved to Altadena. We bought a place like at the when it was affordable up in Altadena in like 1999, and it was a fixer-upper. Very ambitious, big yard. Sort of be careful what you wish for. And so there's this big yard, and nothing. It's a really nice piece of property, just a big rectangle, old farmhouse, and like a farmhouse style, like a craftsman, but without the extra stuff behind me on my room. Anyway, then there was nothing. It was an old fig and some plums and an apricot and a white sapote tree. Do you know what that is? White sapote? So far we have Katie and Suzanne, right? Do you know what white sapote is?
Sorry, we're all muted so that we don't, interrupt
Okay.
you with our
Well, if you know,
chewing or whatnot.
because I sort of want to know.
Let's see, isn't there a black or a brown sapote as well? That's like
There's a
chocolate.
black sapote. There's a few different sapotes, and I think what it is, it's the Aztec word for sweet fruit, and the Spanish sort of made it sapote. But there's a bunch of fruit called sapote, and its common name that's not necessarily related to each other. In fact, most of them are. I think there's a green sapote that's related to white sapote, or one of them. Anyway, so there was a white sapote tree in my backyard. I'm looking at it right now on my window, and it's huge. Someone planted it like 75 years ago, and I didn't know what it was. It was loaded with fruit, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about fruit trees, and it was like a tropical pear. I thought it was a pear tree, but it's misshapen, and so a nursery identified it, and they didn't know how good it was. The Sunset Western says you can't plant them over a driveway, or you'll get too much fruit and it'll be a big mess. Well, it was so delicious, and then I think we had to get all this electric work, and there was like an electrical contractor said, "You know what I would do, because it was a huge piece of property, it's like almost half acres. I'd plant fruit trees." And I hate to say it, but I did that, and I sort of gained ground as the years went on. Like the first year, I just avocado, like I was careful, and some shade trees, and then because of the white sapote, I discovered the California Rare Fruit Growers. Do you guys know that organization? It's terrific. It's a great organization. I highly recommend it. Anyway, that was a real eye opener, because there's just all millions of fruit, and you can grow so much of it in Southern California. It's not funny, So very quickly, I was like really into like as much fruit as I could grow. I was just filling the space, and also at the time, one of the big wholesale guys that sell deciduous fruit trees like apples and plums and pluots and stuff, they developed this thing called backyard orchard culture, which wasn't anything new, but it was like using different techniques to keep them smaller, and that way a normal homeowner isn't swimming in a full-size tree with way more than you know what to do with. Well, I drank that Kool-Aid, and that just enabled me to put in more fruit trees in my property. So it changes, but I've got well over 100 fruit trees on the property, and no real people in my family from agriculture to tell me you can't do that. You know, it's like a catalog. I don't know if you guys know gardening catalogs. You know, in the winter you choose these catalogs and you want one of these, and when I could do that, so I went kind of nuts. So anyway, I have a PowerPoint just to show you. Oh, and then so I know a lot about it. So then I really got into it, and then I went to work for Tree People for 11 years, and I ran their fruit tree program. Those are pretty lights.
I know. Hi, Nico.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just
So
trying
so I worked for Tree People. That's where I met Lora. We worked on this, and we donors would give us money, and we buy really surefire, good kinds of fruit trees to give to like at need communities in LA. You know, people would get free fruit trees, so it's pretty cool. So I did that for 11 years. I think I oversaw the distribution of over like 50,000 fruit trees in 11 years. So that was pretty cool. How many of them stayed alive, I don't know, but some of them did. There goes my cat.
I know.
So
It would be
anyway,
really interesting to find out
yeah,
the fate of some of those trees.
yeah, right. And so yeah, Laura really helpful. We worked on that together for a few years. Anyway, so I left that in 2014, but I still have my place. I'm a master gardener. I was a big, huge rare fruit grower guy. I don't even know if I'm paid up right now, but I think it's a terrific organization. It's got a great website, and I'll plug it more as we go on. But anyway, so I got a lot of citrus and I got a lot of deciduous, but we're not going to sort of focus on that. If you have questions about that, I could probably take questions on that. But so I got about 20 slides on a PowerPoint.
So
So
I'm
should we do
mostly
that?
going to let you just go through the PowerPoint, and I'll only
Yeah.
interrupt if I have something to clarify or add. But since we're also recording this for posterity, I
Yeah.
might just interject with questions that other people might have.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Okay.
otherwise,
And
I'll let
so
you go. And
so go to share screen. Talk me
Yeah.
through this. Okay. Here we go. Share. Okay. Hit slide. Show
yeah, and then hit slideshow.
from beginning.
Yep.
Okay. Where's hit slideshow?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not going to the view slide.
There we go. There we go.
There we go.
All right. Okay. Let me move you guys over a little. All right. So here we go. There's a fly buzzing around here, and my cat may launch across, may screw shit up. Anyway, growing subtropical and unusual fruit. I got a bunch of mangoes right now, 2 different kinds of mango trees. I had some pears. There's the cat that may interrupt us in the middle of my hood pear. Key apple is the thing that I am doing right now. It's ripe right now. It's not an apple. It's incredible flavor. It's very tart. It's like a dense tartar, but very much like an apricot, except in a way more interesting. This tree's from Southern Africa. It loves our climate. It's drought tolerant, and it's got these unbelievable thorns that are like that long. Can you see me? I don't know if you can see me. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can see both your screen and you're like in a little thumbnail.
Okay. Well, So it's a natural fence that they apparently, elephants and rhinos won't go through it. I mean, the thorns are really, really gnarly. And you need a male and female. Most fruit trees, you don't need a lot of fruit trees have different pollinating characteristics. Not all of them are self-fruitful, where the pollen from the flower on the fruit can pollinate itself. There's different things going on. But with this particular species, you need a male plant and a female plant. They have like male flowers and female flowers, and the female flowers get pollinated by the male flowers, and that's the only one that gets fruit.
So did you have to buy the two separate plants, and they were already,
Yeah.
The plants were sexed?
Yeah, they figured it out. It's the way they propagate them. They know what's what. They're not seedlings.
Big do these get? Like, do you need a big space for them?
No, well, they do get big, but you could keep them small. Now, I have them on my parkway, and that is right now not very cool because they actually extend beyond the curb. And so I'm sure neighbors that, have nice cars are pissed at me. So I got to get out there. It's actually in fruit right now. And, well, our friend, I've got a ton of stuff in my freezer. It's great for jams. It's very tart. There's this jam I make with finger lime and key apple and mulberry that's like this big hit. But anyway, so it's great culinary, I think. It's got 2 little seeds in it. It's kind of medium. I mean, be hard to keep super small because it really likes it here. I think there was one up the tree, people on the trail, and there were 2 of them because it would fruit sometimes. Anyway, let me move on. Okay, this is my current favorite thing that I just did. I don't know if you know what pawpaws are. Do you guys know what pawpaws? Now, in Australia or New Zealand, they call papayas pawpaws, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this fruit from, it's the only North American fruit that's like exotic. It's big. It grows basically it's centered in the Ohio River Valley, and it can go all the way down to Florida and go all the way up to upstate New York. And they call it Hoosier bananas. It's kind of like a very ripe banana with sort of juicy fruit overtones. It's related to the Annona species like cherimoya and soursop in those. And the CRFG promoted them like when I was brand new, and I had 4 grafted varieties, and they all died over time. And I don't know anybody that got them to fruit. So 2 years ago, I was in upstate New York visiting my daughter, and I was at a farmer's market in the fall, and I thought, I think they're ripe now. And so I asked around at this farmer's market, and there was actually one of the vendors had one that they were going to eat for lunch. They wouldn't sell to me because I'd never even tried it. And anyway, I asked around, and there was this guy who wasn't there named Richard Cook, who was like a mushroom guy, sort of a forager guy, a real backwoods type guy. And they gave me his number. The guy gave me his number, and he said, tell him I want him for the market. And I called him up, and he said, well, tell that guy he needs to pay me for the ones I already gave him. But anyway, he could tell I was interested, and he invited me to his house, and he had like all these pawpaws that were ripe, and they grow they're very pretty tree. It looks sort of like a cherimoya. It's not big, it's sort of small. They grow sort of in the shade of other trees, and they love wet weather. So they actually are not really designed for Southern California at all. And he was dubious about my chances. He said that grafting was ridiculous because what they do is like bamboo or something, they sucker. And so what you want to do, you need different individual plants to pollinate each other. And they like that the flowers smell funky like carrion. And so they said there's an old adage that you hang a dead cat in your grove and you get better pollination. But anyway, he was kind of a character, and he gave me a box of these jujubes, and it was a vacation, jujubes, no, pawpaws, and it was we had a car, so we were driving to different places, and we had a wedding to go. A niece was getting married in outside of Boston. So by the time I got to Boston, I had all this ripe pawpaws in my back seat that were grossing out like half the people, and half the people really loved them. It's sort of like a very soft banana-y sort of thing, squishy, and it's sort of like juicy fruit and a banana. And there's a lot of variation, which some of this stuff is like that. Like my white sapote, each fruit is kind of different from each other. Anyway, I got a bunch of seeds from him, and out of that, I grew some seedlings. So on the right there is my little pawpaw patch that I finally planted out in July. I got it under shade cloth. I got it very, good irrigation, and it's sort of at the bottom of my property, so it should stay wetter down there. And probably the first few years at least, I'm going to have to keep it sort of shady because of California. But that just shows you how you get, if you're really into this, like a fruit geek type stuff, you kind of get, so you want to, that's what really interests me, is all this horticultural stuff. And the guy was really cool, and I'd love to report back to him that I got it to fruit. Okay, anyway, that's the pawpaw story. I won't go into such detail on other stuff. But then there's cherimoya. I got a few cherimoyas. Mark Twain said it's the most delicious fruit known to man. Have you guys tried cherimoya? Yeah, so it's just killer good. I describe it as like a citrusy pina colada kind of pudding. I don't know if that's a good description. So it's related to pawpaws, and that was the thing when the rare fruit growers failed 20 years ago. They were like, we can't grow pawpaws, but why would we want to grow them anyway? Because we have cherimoyas. And so that's true. Why would you? But because we can do cherimoyas, and they actually grow them commercially near the water, like up in Ventura or down in San Diego. So if you guys are in the basin, I don't know where you two are. I know Laura's in
Hollywood, where
oh, you guys are all, yeah,
based.
yeah,
The local elementary school is actually called Cherimoya.
right. That's
And there
right.
was some cherimoya, someone must have had a commercial cherimoya planting.
Yeah.
It's obvious to me that Bronson Canyon was a grapefruit grove, and then Beechwood was probably lemons. And then you have the HPOZs, like the historic districts in Hollywood, and the one right by Beechwood that's just a little bit east is like the historic Grove area.
Yeah. Well, before the show business, there was people in Southern California. Really, there were a few famous nurseries that tried to do stuff with. They tried to do dates in Southern California. All the avocados first came here. Then they were interested in citrus, of course, but other stuff too, like white sapote comes from that time, loquat comes from that time, and cherimoya, I'm sure, comes from that time. And so there were nurseries. There was one up here in Altadena that was called the West Indies Nursery, and it was pretty cool. And anyway, there's still, I have friends who live on the site of it. Where it was, and they had, I think they lost them, but they had, when they first moved there like 30 years ago, there was some avocado trees which were probably from then. And then the deodar cedars, they were into exotic stuff, like the opposite of California natives, right? And like what'll work in Southern California, and so much stuff, I tell you, will work. It's a very pretty tree. It's a little tree. There it is on the right. You can shape it almost however you want. They do need to get really good fruit. You'll get fruit if you don't pollinate, but it's much better if you hand pollinate. And this year with the COVID, I was able to pollinate way more than I ever have, and it was fun. And you kind of pollinate off every few days in July, June, July, August, and then I'll have and that's my plant on the left there. See all those?
And when will they be ripe? Winter.
They'll be ready in the winter. You can buy them inexpensively in the Asian supermarkets anytime from like January through June. I think. I don't know if they refrigerate them or hold them back. And they're pretty good. I think they're probably better from the farmers markets, or, my mother was like a third generation Californian, and she'd always heard about them, but she'd never tried them. And so she loved them. And so I used to get them from one of the, the people that grow them, like up in Ventura, like a gift package on Mother's Day. She loved it. And because she'd always heard about it. She had an aunt, another California native, who told her that she tried a cherimoy when she was a girl. And, and so it's pretty cool, to be, that there's a heritage of this stuff. Anyway, and here's what my thing was. I was talking about this earlier. My tree's on the right there. It's huge. It totally loves it here. It's like citrus. It's distantly related to citrus. It's nothing like citrus except, the way plants are related is by how they propagate, and there's big, weird, mutant, like orange pip seeds that are a little annoying. But, it's been around. Once you really get into it, you start noticing trees, and people don't eat them. So you'll like go, get the ground falls from trees, Dina, there was one right on the entryway to the freeway, like the no man's land, the curly, the circle, and it got developed and they took it out. But I used to go there and grab those. It does really well here.
There's a big white sapote tree at Cherimoya School. So
sure.
They don't have a great cherimoya tree, but there is a big white sapote. And
and I think it's a lot like it, but a lot of people say no. They get an off flavor. They bruise easily, which is why you don't see them. You'll find them at Gelson's, but they're not very good. Mine are just coming into fruit now. So if you're interested, I got my email at the end. You can, with any questions or whatever, if you want to get some fruit, I have a lot.
You should also mention Lily's sapote bars.
Oh yeah. My wife Lily baked these like custard. What were they like? It was a long time ago.
Lemon bars.
Like lemon bars, but with white sapote. They were fantastic.
Oh, good.
It's very. I figured out ways to cook with it, but it's kind of labor intensive. It's anyway. It's a great fruit. All right. Wait, let me go back. So there's these things called white sapote, and as I said, it's just the Aztec name for sweet fruit. Totally unrelated is black sapote, which is a kind of persimmon. It's like an evergreen persimmon. If you look at the leaves on the right, you'll see they look sort of like persimmon leaves. They can't graft them because deciduous persimmon, like all the Japanese ones and the Native American one, that you can graft those to each other, but not the tropical one because it's evergreen, so it won't work. But it's like and they're more sensitive to cold. That's one of the limiting factors. In Hollywood, you should do better than Altadena. I have a big tree now. I planted it years ago, and it's getting pretty big, and I'm getting reliable crops of fruit. And and I didn't like, at first I just thought it was sweet and kind of not that interesting, but I think it's pretty good now. It's like a persimmon. It's like if you had chocolate pudding with persimmon. Has anybody tried it? You have? Yeah, what'd you think?
I was expecting it to be a lot more chocolatey, but it wasn't. It is more like persimmon, but that texture is very much like pudding. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Yeah. Okay, so here's a couple of things that I have, but I haven't got them to fruit yet. This is Chico sapote. Now, I've had a couple different ones over the years, but I planted it in my avocado grove. It's very slow growing, and it's right behind the black sapote, so I think it got shaded out. I lost one in a frost we had a few years ago, and then I have this other one, and I actually moved it to a sunnier area. We moved that and a reed avocado that was also getting shaded out. And so I have real high hopes because it's it takes a while for some of these trees that are slow growing to bear fruit. And I think this is a grafted variety. So I think I should get fruit, and they say it's delicious. It's grainy, I guess maybe sort of like tropical guava, but they say it's like a pear, the way pear's grainy, but it's like so sweet. It's like it's in this, the outside they say is this sort of glaze like brown sugar, like cooked brown sugar, like a syrup. That's what I've heard it described. I'll let you know. It's very sensitive to the winter, so you may have to
Heard it
baby it.
described that way by other like CRFG people in Southern California.
Yeah.
Okay, just because I wonder.
Yeah, no, they grow it here. You know, the rare fruit growers is really happening like in San Diego and Orange County. And so you'll find people that have really great trees, you know.
Yeah. One of my cousins who lives in Miami, has a mango tree and grows star fruit. And I realize that they have such a different climate than us.
Yeah.
They don't have the cold. They've got a lot more heat and humidity.
Yeah, well, one of the things that makes it difficult for us is our June gloom and our sort of cold, clammy winters and springs. That makes it hard for a lot of this tropical stuff because they can't land running, with the, and also everything, the fall is the huge season for everything, it seems. Although my black sapotes were ready in July, but they were on there for like the whole year. Bananas stay on there for a long time. And that's our limiting factor. So a lot of times the trees, mangoes, a lot of these subtropical and tropical trees we can grow provided we don't get a freeze, which we get like every 20 years. There was a big one, I think, in 2014 or I forget when, and it wiped out a bunch of people in Altadena. The guy that was the president of the Altadena chapter quit. He quit being president. I think he quit because he had his place. He had a really great place down near the Huntington, and it was a valley, and so the cold moved in there and killed everything. I've had better luck. I've lost a few things to cold, but a lot of times what happens with the cold is it'll just kind of burn, freeze the outer parts of stuff, and the tree will survive. But it definitely does not help for them to expand and grow into big trees like a tropical mango tree. I don't think that'll ever happen. But white sapote is pretty big. That's a big old tree. So that's the deal on some of this tropical, subtropical stuff. Okay, I do have this tree. That's not mine on the left. Mine looks sort of like that. It's in the ground. I smuggled a couple of seeds out from Hawaii in 2012, and mine's about that tall. And I had it in Hawaii, and it is. I don't know if this is a little more common. Have you guys tried it?
I've had one that Oscar bought at like a local grocery store.
Which can be funky if you get them from local grocery stores. Was it?
It was not super exciting. And I feel like I maybe tried this when I was in Cuba. But
yeah, probably.
I was in Cuba in January, so we were not there for like peak amazing fruit season. We had like the best pineapples you've ever eaten.
Wow. Yeah.
Tiny little pineapples. And imagine pineapples not sprayed with a bunch of chemicals. Because in Hawaii, they spray a lot.
Yeah.
They're like these itty bitty little pineapples that were super sweet.
I think I've had this as well because they have an ice cream in Mexico they make out of this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's like a very sweet potato. Yeah. I had it in Hawaii and I loved it. And we'll see. I've been protecting mine. Now I think mine, when it's a little tree, you may want to protect it if you got some cold weather coming up. And in Altadena, maybe not Hollywood, this global warming, severe heat spells, a young tree you maybe want to protect from the sun a little bit during a heat wave. But I think it's out of the woods now, knock wood. I think we'll see what it does. It's like 2012, it's like 8 years old. All right, let me move on.
How big did those
cactus? What's that?
How big did those trees grow?
The mamey and the chico, I don't think they get very big. Maybe in Florida they do. But as I say, we've had this limiting factor with our cold winters. And not that they're that cold, they just, where they're from naturally, they kind of got a year-round thing going. They never stop, you know, and so that's a limiting factor for us. Maybe that's why, because I looked it up before we met tonight, the definition of subtropical, because I've never been clear on it, and I guess we could say tropical, subtropical, because Florida, it said southern Florida is tropical, and northern Florida is like subtropical. So I guess we're almost subtropical, but I think because of the Mediterranean type climate, there's probably things. Do you know the answer to that, Laura? Like what the difference is?
I mean, we don't, oh, I mean, the tropical and subtropical is just literally your latitude.
Right. But I mean, is California subtropical? Is San Diego subtropical?
We're not even technically subtropical. The line is in Baja, but by our, you know, weather patterns, you know, we can certainly grow a lot of subtropicals. We're perfect for subtropical climate wise.
Yeah.
I think a lot of our limits for the more tropical stuff is, of course, the winter cold, but just that we don't have that like mucky, humid, you know, like right now it's so arid. So even though it's miserably hot, we don't have the humidity that the trees really like to thrive.
But on the coast they do, like coastal San Diego and Ventura, where they grow cherimoyas.
It's much more humid.
More conducive to that. All right, let me keep going. Did that answer that question though, about how big they get?
Yes, thank you.
Well, okay, so cactus, this is something that we could do, right? I mean, it's drought tolerant and with climate change, definitely. And, you know, there's all kinds of prickly pear. I think cholla also has a similar fruit. I don't know that much about it. I don't even know that people get into it. So I had a huge one on the property, but we slowly lost it, and it's gone now. But it was just gargantuan, you know. And the fruit are called tuna, and the leaves, the young leaves, are very nutritious. Apparently, it's really good offset diabetes. The native populations, indigenous people, used it a lot. Now, apple cactus, or what I know as Cereus peruvianus, this is also very good. In fact, sometimes with the taste tests with dragon fruit and pitahaya, which is the next slide, it wins. Good old apple cactus wins. And I know there's different species. It's Cereus peruvianus, and there's some other ones, and I think a lot of them have this kind of fruit. I should have had, they look like dragon fruit, not the opuntia. You've seen that. That looks different. It's sort of gelatinous. It has these seeds that are pretty prominent seeds. They're little, but they're like pomegranate seeds or something. And they, you know, and they're sort of watermelon-y kind of flavor.
I think they're nice and just like crunchy and light. There's a little stickiness to them. My dad has a huge Cereus peruvianus in their yard in Hollywood, and I have several of its children, which are now, of course, quite large and bearing fruit themselves. And
well, it's just such a no-brainer because it requires no water, you know, once it's established, and it's pretty good fruit.
And the flowers are gorgeous.
And the flower, night blooming cereus. I mean, it's just a gorgeous flower. And so are dragon fruit pitahaya. And, you know, the apple cactus looks, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. It looks like this. You know, I don't know if you guys have had it, but the apple cactus is white with these little tiny seeds. And it's kind of refreshing if you get them fresh. They're kind of melony and it really nice texture, you know. And so this is a big thing. Dragon fruit pitahaya. Pitahaya, it says from tropical America, and the Asians call it dragon fruit because it's these weird looking Dr. Seuss looking fruits, and there's different species and they cross pollinate, and there's a bunch of different species. They all have this beautiful flower too. I'm sure people are using the pollen from the other one, So this is a big popular thing with the rare fruit growers. It's sort of the guy who founded the the rare fruit growers. This was sort of his holy grail before he died. He was a World War II guy who died in like 2005 or something, when he was like almost 100. And this was his sort of swan song. So there's a lot of people getting in arguments about it, like who gets to name it and stuff like that. But it's a pretty cool, it's another easy thing to do. You see this picture, it grows it's like a parasitic, grows within the canopy of a forest and climbs up. And then once this is true of a lot of fruit trees, once they go lateral is when they flower and fruit. And on my Jabota Caba, which is that first weird fruit I had on the opening page, I'll discuss that when we get to the fruit. The slide will come up again. I'll talk about that. But anyway, you need a training thing with the dragon fruit, with the pitahaya. Okay. Papaya, I've got all three kinds right now. Mexican, a brand new baby. Hawaiian, get good papayas. Now it's a little limiting in Altadena. Like, they do not like cold and wet. So you need to sort of plant them high. And you could even like cover the roots with a tarp or something in the winter and sort of control your watering. And then there's a really great one called Babaco, which I just got. I got brand new Mexican and Babaco. And Babaco I never got because I heard it was kind of weird. You need to cook it. And then other people said, no. And I think because I like, now that I've been doing it a while, I like the more eccentric kind of offbeat stuff. The Babaco really interests me. It's a smaller fruit, and it's not, you can only get clones of it. So anyway, I've got a couple of them now. So I'm excited by that. So I have, you can do papaya, which is pretty cool. Okay, Myrtaceae, guava family. There's tons of different things that are from that family of fruit trees. We know guava, we know pineapple guava, we know strawberry guava. Those are real common. But I tell you, man, there's so many different kinds all over the world. So the one that's on the front page is this very weird thing called Brazilian Jabota Caba. And I don't think that's my tree, but my tree looks like this. It's weird. They flower and fruit on the branches of the tree. It's the weirdest thing. And they're sort of like a Concord grape with kind of a leathery skin, but they're actually good. They're sort of like, you crunch into this like leathery skin, and it's sort of like a sprightly white, sort of like a lychee or something. Really good, little seed in it. Now I got this tree when I was brand new down in San Diego. Most of the California rare fruit grower nurseries are in San Diego. The exotic stuff anyway, the subtropical and tropical stuff. And I got a seedling, and they laughed at me. The next nursery I went to said, that's going to take like 20 years before it produces, because it's very slow growing. So I grew it in this one place, and as soon as I trained it laterally at like 10 or 12 years, it flowered and fruited. So that's something they say. I've tried this in Long Beach. There's a terrific guy who knows a lot about passion fruit. I didn't put anything on a passion fruit, I don't think. And Jorge Ochoa, who's in charge of the horticulture department at Long Beach City College, and he used to work for LA City Rec and Parks. Anyway, we went on a little walk. He showed me someone was growing jackfruit. It's very Asian population in some of the neighborhoods in Long Beach. And he took me on a walk, and there was someone with jackfruit in their front yard. But there was, I think one of his students brought in this Java plum, which I really liked. And so he said, grow it from seed. So I actually have a big tree now, and probably it's at least 10 years old. I'll probably get fruit from it pretty quick. And I think it'd be really good it's purple, dark purple. I think it'd be good to make preserves out of. But see, there's just a lot of different kinds. This is good old tropical guava. I have this one, it's pink on the inside. In this middle is pineapple guava, which has sort of a minty flavor. I used to have a couple of these. I don't anymore. This is what they call cherry of the Rio Grande. I have one, and it's set fruit a couple of times, but I barely tried it. I can't even tell you. I have Suriname cherry, this pretty one here, which is on the logo for the Rare Fruit Growers, Suriname cherry. This is lemon strawberry guava, and this is red strawberry guava. So there's just tons of different kinds of Myrtaceae family. It's called the guava family. And they like it here. There's some of this stuff like cherry of the Rio Grande and Suriname cherry are pretty tropical. But this other stuff like pineapple guava does great even in Northern California. And strawberry guava is the yellow one, and the red one, they do good too.
My interjection on the Suriname cherry
Yeah.
is, I've grown and brought home lots of odd fruits, and my husband is like really indifferent about a lot of it. And the Suriname cherries, we have a Suriname cherry tree that I bought at Exotica probably 7 or 8 years ago. And he's like, this is amazing. He's like, this is worth growing.
Oh, like, cool.
He doesn't think that anything other than the citrus and the Suriname cherry are actually worth growing.
Well, and they vary. Like when Jorge and I walked through Long Beach, there was a fruiting Suriname cherry, and I didn't like it. He said it was probably a seedling, and a lot of times Myrtaceae fruit has a turpentine aftertaste. Some of the more odd stuff, and so. But maybe there's something called Lolita Suriname cherry. Maybe you got one of those.
I mean, it was obvious to me the guy at Exotica had just, there were like trees rooted through 1-gallon pots that looked like they've been there for 10 years.
I love it there.
I don't know how good the record keeping is. There was just like
it's terrible. Yeah,
plants in a corner. So I don't know that I have the named variety. But I bought 2 seedlings. I still have one of them. And I just find that it wants more water than I can regularly give it. So I need to always remember to water it. And then it does flower and fruit. And they're delicious. And I
think I have like 2, but I think they're seedlings. So we'll see how they do when they finally fruit. But yeah, so that's Myrtaceae. Okay, dessert bananas, easy to grow. They're smaller again because of that seasonal thing. Like, be harder to do a big full-size banana, or certainly what's the big plantain. That'd be hard to do, I think. But these little guys, they will stay on the tree a long time. But if they time right, I mean, I've had many like this bunch, and they're so good. Ice cream banana. I've got 3 right now, 3 different varieties. And the ice cream, I got Raja Puri, which is sort of a semi-dwarf banana from India. And then I have something called Mysore, which is kind of reddish tinge in the leaves. And then Java Blue or ice cream banana has sort of a bluish tinge. And they're just delicious, and you have to work. This is what happens. You cut this. This is called the bunch, right? In professional banana terms, this is called the bunch. And then each one of these things, which we call a bunch when we buy at the store, called hands. And the whole thing is called a mat. And then they don't reproduce sexually. You got to clone. You chop off a chunk of the mat with enough roots intact, they call a pup, a little baby banana. And then you plant that and take care of it, and it'll become a tree. They're actually not a tree. They're called a herbaceous pseudostem. It's actually, the stem is very watery. It's a bunch of leaves wrapped up. And they actually know per variety, it's like, okay, the 27th leaf of the ice cream banana will become the flower stalk. They know this. It's usually in the upper 20s. I don't know what ice cream is, but, and I put a website on the end, which the guy knows so much about bananas. He's in San Diego. All your banana questions answered. So it'll work in the landscape if you don't have the water. You can't afford the water. They'll work. You keep the brown dead leaves trimmed off, and it's kind of nice in the landscape. But if you want fruit, you have to water it and fertilize it regularly. They like a lot of water. So a lot of people will have them downhill, like in a gray water system or something. You know, they'll have them ready to be watered, and they do like a lot of, they're very hungry. And then you get fruit, man. It's so good, and it kind of blows the kids love it, you know. Like, the only thing is you got to deal with this very quickly, you know. It'll be like this, and then you'll come out in 2 days and it'll be like this. And so you got to like freeze these or give them away. And they're just delicious. Pakistan mulberry is a deciduous tree I have. That's my big old tree in my yard, and it dominates my life in late April, May. But you can get $16 a pound for it, and they're like this. And they're really only good for fresh eating, hard to cook with. I cook with them, but they're just not as, they're so special like this. And it's a lot to deal with. We put I don't deal with it now. I have some young urban farmers who are handling the crop, and we made a lot of money on it in May, which was nice, offset the water bill, you know. But it's an amazing tree, and there's not a lot of stuff then. There's like loquats and maybe some late citrus. There's not much else in that time of year. So chefs love them. It's a pretty cool fruit. Jujube is really cool. It's called Chinese date. It's a deciduous tree. This tree looks kind of like mine. That's why I grabbed the photo. I'm a terrible photographer. I tried doing photos of my place, but most of them didn't look that good. I don't know. Have you guys tried jujube? It's like a crunchy apple. It's good. And they dry. They're very interesting dried. You can dry them, and they're sweet. They call them Chinese dates, but they're nothing like a date. They're not nearly as sweet and wonderful as a date. They're kind of like an apple, but they're supposedly very nutritious for you. They're in Chinese medicine. My sister's an acupuncturist, and she said, "Oh, you don't eat those. You use them in medicine." And I said, "The rare fruit growers," she's my older sister. I go, "The rare fruit growers are all over them, sis. What are you talking about?" And so I really love them. And dried, I swear to God, they're like caramel corn. You know, they're kind of crunchy, and it's like eating caramel corn. You know. So I think they're really great. I have a couple of them, and they're very drought tolerant. This is a really good choice for us, jujube. Australian finger lime. I have a tree I got from the Orange County rare fruit grower plant sale, and when it first came out, I think I probably have the biggest tree in LA. It's a small bush fruit from Australia. They're citrus. This photo here, I don't know if you tried it, but my wife loves them. She uses them like in tuna fish salad or salad dressing and stuff. You can do all kinds of, it's kind of labor intensive because you chop them in half and then you got to squeeze those little like eggs, the little seed sacs, and it's kind of oily. So it really is kind of wonderful with fish. Like I think sushi chefs love them because it's a great garnish with fish. You do a lot of things with them. And so that's something we can grow. A couple little things. I got my 8-ball pomegranate. It's a miniature pomegranate, very, very dark. The seeds are like black. I got a couple other pomegranates too. And this is a photo I took. You absolutely can't tell how cool this is, but it's near this telephone pole. It's espaliered. It's 3 figs espaliered along the parkway here. And people don't steal them because they don't know what the hell it is.
Quince, not 3 figs.
What did I say? I said fig?
Figs. Yeah.
Quince. Thanks, Laura. I hope I haven't done that elsewhere. But anyway, 3 quince. I'm into quince, but there's a problem, which I was telling Laura about, which is codling moth, which quince are related to apple and pear. You have to cook them, but they're wonderful to do things with in the kitchen. And I would love to have these quince, but the codling moth wipes them out. It's more tropical. It's not as into the cold. It does better in our climate than apples and pears. So the cycling of the codling moth is really bad. And there's no big aggressive way to treat it except with this IPM nice way. And it's very difficult. I kind of dropped the ball this year, even with COVID. So if I can't get them next year, because you get these, it's horrible. You got this beautiful looking fruit and you cut into it and there's all these wormholes. If it happens again, I'm going to take them out. I'm just going to cry uncle. My buddy, Tom Spellman, who works for Dave Wilson, he said, you don't even bother with quince because it's so bad in our climate to deal with this codling moth, which the organic apple farmers also have a problem with. But, you know, if it gets a couple of fruit with apples or pears, it doesn't bother me. Pears can be susceptible to it. Anyway, but I do have it, and hopefully next year I'll report that, you know, I have these beautiful quince. Okay, I just got a couple more. I know this is a lot.
And the quince flowers are very pretty. So
they're beautiful. They're like a bigger flower than apple. They're like an apple blossom, but they're bigger. So it's really a really cool fruit tree. And then there's these fuzzy, weird sort of pear-looking apples, you know, and then people walk by and they go, what the hell is that? You know, they don't know. So it's kind of a neat fruit. You know, they cook it down and make, you know, Turkish delight and membrillo with cheese and wine in Spain, where they cook it with a lot of sugar and just cook it down. The word marmalade is a Portuguese word for quince, I was told. It was like the original preserves, quince. It's weird. You know, you got to add sweet because they're pretty tart. This is an unusual fruit. I got rid of mine because I couldn't figure out anything to do with it. And I just was fresh, and it was hard to get rid of because it suckers. You need a male and female. Is really good. I had it at the Rare Fruit Growers. It's ripe in the fall when I have a ton of stuff, which is one of the reasons I got rid of it. It looks like this sort of berry, but it's like a mild, very sweet watermelon flavor. So the texture's not like watermelon, but the flavor is. And I thought they were pretty cool. I sort of wish I hadn't gotten rid of it, but I just couldn't deal with it. It was just like all this fresh fruit, and what do you do with it? Maybe there's a way to make a jelly out of it or something. But I couldn't figure that out. But it was years ago when I got rid of it. And it was a pretty cool. I just wanted to put it in there so you guys know about it. One of those things I found out about the Rare Fruit Growers. Okay, here's your resources. That's me. If you ever want to contact me, if you want some white sapotes or anything else I got. The Rare Fruit Growers, I can't say enough about this organization. And they have like their nursery. What do they do? They have their nursery affiliates listed on their website, and I swear everything. And most of the tropical stuff is down in San Diego County, but there's two fabulous nurseries up in the Northwest. There's one in Southern Washington called Rain Tree, and one in Portland called One Green World. And they have this stuff like more temperate. And there's all kinds of stuff that we can grow that's more weird berries from Alaska and stuff like that. And like I want to grow medlar. That's something my nephew grew in Portland. And that's sort of a thing like the pawpaw thing. It's like maybe I could grow medlar someday. It's in Shakespeare and stuff. And then the great guys in San Diego, they are into figs and bananas, and they're bananas. It's called We Be Bananas, and there's just way more information on how to grow bananas. And then this is really cool. It's still around. Purdue has a PDF of it. Fruits of Warm Climates, this old-timey book, but it's got all the Latin, so it's way more botanical than me. And it'll show you how stuff's related, like all the different I think it's just like a huge chapter on Myrtaceae, you know. And you'll find your things there that we can't really grow unless we had a greenhouse, like pineapple or what's that one? Mangosteen. Everybody raves about that. And she'll have all that stuff, all the different kind of lychees and rambutans and stuff like that. So this is a good resource and kind of fun.
Okay, Steve, I have one big question for you.
Yes.
So I know that this has been a process, growing things, eating them, figuring out what you like, what you don't like. What is really worth growing that you found? Like what's got a big bang for the buck in terms of like your time investment?
There's many things. I mean, we do
Like,
citrus
what are
so
your
well.
favorites? Yeah, it could be multiple. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know Scott Kleinrock, when he set up the thing at Huntington, wanted to do a permaculture edible landscape designed for our climate. And I think he was right as far as what works here. I mean, jujube, pomegranate, mulberry, and fig, those don't need as much water. And maybe persimmon, because they have the Oriental persimmon has a deep taproot. Most fruit trees don't have much in the way of taproots. Like the way most California natives almost all have taproots, but fruit trees are usually like it's happening in that like like just a few inches below the surface. But persimmons supposedly typically have a deep taproot, so maybe they're more drought tolerant. That Che was pretty drought tolerant. And so if you're thinking about those kind of considerations, the good old like apples, they find that we can in fact grow all the stuff they used to think we couldn't grow, like high chill apples. They find that most apples acclimate to low chill. There's a whole thing with deciduous fruit trees where you need a certain amount of chill in the winter. And so there's a lot of stone fruit, like peaches and nectarines, that you can't grow because they need too many. They're from southern Canada or something. They just need like all this chill that we don't have. So their system will never flower and fruit right. But there's a bunch of stone fruit that's really amazing. Some of these pluots that they've developed, when some of the plums, I didn't even know there was a plum tree on my property. I didn't even know I liked plums. So my little thing about stone fruit, we used to talk about this at Tree People. The growers, the commercial growers, will actually come right out and admit that taste is their third priority. It's how it looks and how it ripens, and that it travels all at the same time. So it ripens all at once, and then flavor. So what they do is they develop these super, super sweet varieties, which you might not even like. They'd be too sweet. But that way they can pick it before it's fully ripe, and it's kind of bland, and it's kind of like, well, we can say it's a plum because it looks like a plum or a nectarine. And I don't know how many times you've been fooled at Vaughn's or something, like, oh, that nectarine, how could that be bad? And it's just bland. And they actually are upfront about it. So the only way to eat that stuff where you really enjoy the flavor is
to grow it yourself.
Grow it yourself. Even farm stands, maybe, but even farmers markets, they have to pick them a little bit with stone fruit. They have to pick them a little bit before they're fully ripe. So I didn't even know I liked plums because I had never had one. And then I had this old, like some Japanese dark plum and a Santa Rosa. And so I think the plums and the pluots, I mean, Flavor Grenade and some of those other new pluots are just unbelievable. That's the last thing I've installed is, because I lost all my early stone fruit because of like beginner's mistakes, a lot of things like you need to whitewash a lot of your fruit trees. That we get into fruit tree care if you have any questions. But if you prune out the center of a fruit tree, that's unnatural. And so if you're in Altadena or even in Hollywood, I've seen really bad sunburn at that community garden in Venice. That big one that's back inland a ways.
Oh, you mean the Ocean View Farms?
Yeah.
By the San Juan
I've seen
Airport?
really bad sunburn there. And it's like, okay, you got a sunburn everywhere in Southern California. I mean, you got a whitewash everywhere, which is like zinc oxide on your Caucasian nose, like the surfers use. You need a cheap white interior latex paint, not oil, not good paint, cut 50-50 with water that you just put on the south side and anything facing up when you prune out the center of the tree, especially. I mean, avocados will really suffer from it, and everything will. I mean, jujube maybe not. There's a few maybe that won't. But fig, like, things that really like a hot climate do better if you whitewash it. So I made a bunch of mistakes when I was new because I read some of the literature said, oh, you can whitewash, you don't have to, and I didn't. And so what happens is you get this blistering from the sun, and then other infectious things happen, and before you know it, I think I lost most of my original stone fruit. So I put in more recently, and my thing is like to have like really killer yellow, orangey sort of Japanese stone fruit. It's hard to grow the European plums because they like it a little bit colder than we have. And there's some great peaches and nectarines. What's that one that you had, Laura? I finally got one from Steve List. You had this great one. I think you took
A
it out.
nectarine?
Yeah.
I just had a snow queen. That's
Oh,
it.
that's a fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, the
That's
snow queen
so
is
good.
fantastic, but it's not, exotic. It's just
But that's the
so
thing.
good.
I mean,
It's classic.
like Santa Rosa plums, every summer people talk about the Santa Rosa plums they grew up with, and these are things that do really well in LA and like a wonderful pomegranate, the good old fashioned pomegranate. They did taste tests because a lot of new fruit came from when the Soviet Union fell. So they had all these like places like UC Davis, only they were the Russian, the Soviet version in Turkmenistan or whatever. So they got all these like new varieties of tomatoes, right? And pomegranates, all this stuff that grows well there. And so, but in the taste tests, they found people liked wonderful the best, which is just the good old,
It's
maybe
like
it's
the
because
Haas
what they
avocado.
were used to. What's that?
It's like the Haas avocado.
Yeah, Haas avocado. Yeah, but that's a newer thing. And a lot of I planted a Haas avocado when I was brand new before I joined the Rare Fruit Farms. And this Rare Fruit grower guy came and gave me some advice, and he's going, "Why did you plant a Haas?" And I was like, I felt bad, because I should have planted some more exotic variety of avocado. But I tell you, Haas is fantastic. It stays on the tree for a long time, and they're smallish, not super small, but they're, and because they're pebbly, the critters don't eat them as much, That's the other thing is you got to fight the critters for this stuff. It's a really bad rat problem now up here.
Yeah, well, I feel like that could be a whole other talk, but I want to wrap it up so I can
Yeah.
close it and edit it. We'll talk offline, or we'll talk after I'll stop recording.